Is it working? Hello and welcome to Majors in Quinn. My name is Sarah and I am one of the event associates here. We are so pleased to have the University of Minnesota MFA and Creative Writing Program back in store in person. Thank you all for being here tonight. One piece of housekeeping before I hand things over to Rebecca. You may notice a slip of paper on your chair. We ask that if you choose to make any purchases during your visit today, please bring that paper up to the register and hand that to a bookseller to scan. This helps us track sales at this event, which in turn helps us to continue to provide free literary events all year long, including the Mill City Reading Series. Thanks as always for your support. Also, notice the new technology equipment, no echo, it sounds perfect. Enjoy.
Thank you so much for setting us up with new tech this time too. We can never get the tech in Pillsbury working, so this is quite a treat. First off, thank you all for being here. This is our second of 3 Mill City readings this semester. Our next one's going to be on April 27th. It is so wonderful to see such a large crowd of you here. I know we've had some stressful times lately, but it is so great to see everyone come here, show up, and show support for the program and the community. So, without further ado, our first reader of the evening is Frances. Frances Ogamba is a 2025 Arcata Centers Don Lavoie Fellow at George Mason University, a 2024 Jacobson Scholar at the Hawkinson Foundation for Peace and Justice, and a 2024 Miles Moreland Writing Scholar. She received the 2024 Walter H. Judd Travel Fellowship, the 2024 Cobb's Research Grant, and the 2022 College of Liberal Arts Fellowship from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. Her awards include the 2022 Diana Woods Award in Creative Nonfiction, the 2020 Kalahari Short Story Competition, and the 2019 Copiato Prize for Creative Nonfiction. Welcome, Frances.
Thank you. It's so good to be back here. It's also like my final reading. Because I'm in my final year at the MFA program. So I'm going to read an excerpt from a novel that nobody has ever seen. But it's a novel I'm going to be working on for the rest of the year and for a major part of next year as well. 1. The man cranks the volume of the radio with his right hand and steadies the wheel with the left. The presenting voice analyzing the Gophers game on UMN 108.2 reaches him already crossing by the radio waves. He spends every alone time in the car, revisiting his love for sports. When he rode with his girls, his wife and 2 daughters, it was always a different program on the stereo, perhaps an Afrobeat sound they loved. His phone trails, sniping off the presenter's speech flow. He pulls his eyes away from the road and glances at the phone's display screen. The screen is imbued with a photo of his wife, Hawa, and their girls, Nana and Agozie. In the photo, Hawa's hair hides in an orange curl. The girls perched on top of her, obviously howling with laughter. Their slightly unaligned teeth, crowding their dentition like uneven walls. The details of their faces are blurred because the photo was unplanned. Yet, the ghostly effect of the picture and the wavelengths of color that never reach the correct point are his favorite versions of them. They are his steady ground, and who says they cannot slush a little in pictures to be able to hold him up? The man smiles at his thoughts and taps the green button on the phone screen. Hi, babe. Howard's thick voice fills every inch of space in the car. Hi, babe. The girl's voice is mimic in the background. The man chuckles and Howard's voice drains away a little as she scolds the girls to be quiet. Then her voice returns. Babe? Hi, sweetie. What are you up to? The girls are still awake. Are you close to any African store? We ran out of Gary. We can't get tomorrow. No, it's on the menu tonight. I totally forgot. They won't have anything else. I'll check the map. I'm on the highway. I'll call you when I find you. Okay? I love you. I love you. See you soon. I love you, the girls sing in the background. The man laughs. I love you too. He ends the call. Nana, 7, and Agozi, 6, never grew tired of mocking their parents' display of affection. Nana seemed to notice it the first time, the year she turned 4. The constant hugs and touching between the couple jarred her to anger and then to tears. She screamed each time Hawa made a move to hug the man and launched herself in the middle of her parents, screaming her disapproval. Leave my mommy alone! Leave my daddy alone! As Agozi grew older, Nana took her younger sister along on the rampage. Then they stopped fighting them and just loved to watch it. If the couple forgot to hug, the girls nudged them to do it. Daddy, hug mommy. Mommy, go give daddy a kiss. He needs to exit Interstate 35E and head towards the quiet St. Paul neighborhood where they live. He might still find a grocery store open, one that sells African food, even if they end up being more expensive than an African store. He swerves into the sharp curve of the exits from the highway and then taps on the map after he advances on the road a little. It's a little past 8 p.m. A Laurentian mixed forest stares back at him from the left side of the road. He searches for open grocery shops. He senses the lights piercing his rearview mirror before he looks up to see it. The light advances too quickly and is coming at him like a bullet. He considers killing the ignition, but the road has no provisions for parking. He can slow down, and the car with the lights will overtake him. He taps the brake a little and decelerates. The screech behind him is sudden and frightening, metal gouging through coal ties to disembowel the earth. Before the car collides with his, before the cacophony of noise vanishes from the world around him, he feels pity for the squirrels being startled off their trays in the nearby forest. He hears them thudding to the ground in their fright, feels all of startled nature puffing down his neck. At first, starlights come for him. They fall, making mechanical strides towards him as if summoned by the sound of the crash. They litter the smashed windscreen and inflated airbags. They settle on the piece of iron lodged deep in the man's ribs. Next, human voices. People step out of their cars and shut the doors. They pull close to him. They do not touch him. The drone of phone calls circles him. In the company of stars and humans, he feels blessed lonely. An ambulance arrives next. He has always dreaded the lengthy and soulless wail of their sirens. Eyes sharpened by duty rather than feeling peer at him. He's breathing. Gloved hands tug at his body. They debate on the least damaged parts of him to hold on to. The hands leave him alone. More phone calls. Silence. The man feels the reassuring strobe of a torchlight, asking him to hang in there. He is tired and has never desired sleep so badly. But the pain in his ribs do not let him draw enough air. He understands but does not understand. How much has his body changed? Has the tide of his life gone out of its marsh? What will it take to piece him back together? His body feels sliced into parts, and from each part a bone bubbles outward and free. Another ambulance is here. We're going to cut you out. A voice hoping to belt comforts to the man says. The word cut reminds the man of the births of his daughters. Hawa's breathing grew labored during Nana's birth, and she started slipping away from herself. A cesarean section was the next viable option. But even that was risky because Nana's head had already engaged with the breast canal. Either Hawa or Nana would make it out of the theater. Yet they both did. The man cried as he held his wife to his chest. He and Hawa swore to no more children. But as Nana's charm took hold of their hearts, they dreamed of another baby, as entrancing as Nana. They scheduled a second child in 4 years. Unfortunately, the second pregnancy happened less than 6 months after Nana. A fearful gulf opened inside them as they waited out the dreary months. What if Hawa's body succumbs to the pressure and claimed Hawa alongside? Hawa opted for a CS about 1 week into the 37th week, and the maroon-eyed baby that wailed her way into the world doused their 9 long months of worry. 1, 2, lift. 1, 2, lift. The sound of iron eating into iron wore endlessly. The workers grunt as they pull the car apart. The woman's voice leads the dismantling. Cut around the car seat, cut around the B pillar. The voice has certain timbres of Howard's voice. He wonders where the B pillar is located and why they need to circumvent it for his sake. He wishes to get away from the scene and hurry to the closest African store or co-op before they close for the day. It must be 9 p.m. or later. The girls need their gari. It is past their sleep time. Can someone bring him his phone or help him call Hawa and ask her to wait a little? He wants to call out to someone, but his ribs are clogged tight with something chilly. A piece of steel, maybe. Oh, the B pillar. A voice dilates with urgency. Need extra hands here. A man is stuck in his car. Yes, he's breathing. Don't know how long he has. The hands feathering over him withdraw from their tasks. Only the sighing sound continues. Soon the man feels renewed heat around him as the scene swells with new people. A drip of hopefulness seeps back into the night. The hands and voices of new people seem to patch up everything that was getting out of hand. The car frame gives way and they lift the man out while he's still latched on his seat. Then hands detach the seat from under him and the man fears plummeting to the ground. They lower him gently instead, on the hard surface of a gurney, and his body winces as they stretch it to fit it. The comfort of being folded in his vehicle dissipates. A blast of air licks his skin. They pile warm blankets on him. Someone massages warmth into his feet. There is a confused bit of silence. Someone activates the cabin with details of the accident. Questions and speculations rock the cabin. The middle-ager in the SUV was drunk. He died. Our man here, I hope he holds out. It is then that the man understands that he has been in an accident. He feels sad for the SUV man who died and for his state of dyspnea, which hurts badly. He feels sad for his girls who would fall asleep without their guide. He feels sad for Hawa, who might be quietly seething in anger at his lateness, or worried that his number has strayed out of range. Maybe he would still meet up with the stores if someone helps him remove the metal hindering him from breathing well. He might still be able to go home tonight. He imagines laughing it over with Hawa and the girls, saying, "Stars watched over me. Can you imagine it? It was the weirdest trance ever." The darkness of the ambulance lifts. A tall building and the letters St. Jude Hospital fizzle in and out of his vision. He cannot tell whether his eyes are open or shut. Many hands come together once more and lift him. Cold breeze caresses the blankets and reaches him under the pile. He sees the sky briefly. The stars do not fall this time, but they constellate into a pathway. Before he makes up his mind to glide into the path, the stretcher bearing his body goes into the hospital lobby, and a pause of medical staff take over from the ambulance team. The voices around him change, warmer, more doting. They promise to free up his ribs. A tangy taste of blood fills his mouth. He cannot swallow or spit it out. Someone scissors off clothes up on his body. A hand checks for pulse. They perforate his wrist and insert an IV tube. He perceives the scent of sweet-smelling soap as the hand wipes his body with warm water. Is there anyone we can call yet? The voice has more authority than all the voices ringing around him. Another voice says that a phone was found in the car. They have been able to get a phone number. The man almost chuckles at the irony. His phone survived the impact of the crash, while his body did not. They found his state ID too, Ikobi Isaiah, 44. The medical staff battles words around him in the room. The man gathers that the B pillar's continuous presence in his ribs is the reason he's still alive, but they must open his body to take it out. Only then will his fate be determined. The man is afraid. He wants to entreat them to leave the steel. The surgeons might know a nice way to cover up the sharp angles of the steel and crop it close to his skin. They would surely find a way to manage his breathing. An oxygen pipe concealed underneath his clothes or something. Cold, relaxing liquid fills his veins and spreads through his body. The pain in his ribs ebbs. He tests his breathing, but realizes that he has no need for it. The surgery needs him to be away from his body for a while, just like when Hawa had the girls. For every birth, he paced the reception, waiting for his wife to return to her body. Now he paces all the same, but just outside of himself. He catalogs some of his worries. If he doesn't get out of surgery early, he will be late for work in the morning. His boss, the chubby-faced man with a look of disappointment permanently embroidered to his face, will fill his inbox with query letters. Something circles around him like the mid-body of a python and near wrestles him to the ground, but he does not fall. He is suspended mid-air as he dangles after the strong grip. He tries to stop himself, to bury his feet in familiar things, in the snow heap that piles outside his home in winter, in the sand of the Mississippi River, splitting Minneapolis and St. Paul into two parts. He settles his feet on the pedals of his daughter's first bicycle, which now lay in the ruin of storage behind their home, missing its tires and pedals. He seeks saving in the warmth of his childhood, in the hands of children with whom he played the game of flight, where they clutched his feet and twirled his torso around. He locks his thighs around the slender stems of all the trees he has ever climbed. He makes a fist around scotch grasses. The hand persists, tugs gently until his hold on everything weakens. All the heaviness of worry falls away from him, and he floats outside the hospital, towards the constellation and the intricate routes they weave in the sky. He falls into the path like a natural feature, and his view of the world begins to transform. A beam of light pours on his two known homes. First, the high-rise building, where creases of worry pucker his wife's forehead as she dials his number. And then his hometown of rusty walled houses and green forests. Palm trees tower out of it like multi-webbed limbs. The sand is a frightening red. The resonant echoing of a gong reaches him and chimes his name 3 times. He feels compelled to respond to the second home's summoning. Thank you.
Our second reader tonight is Claire, who, while technically nonfiction, got the memo about what the best genre is and will be reading fiction for us tonight. Claire Boyle is writing, jumping into lakes, and singing karaoke in Minneapolis.
I'm gonna see how this works. Okay, I think that's fine. Thanks for coming, everyone. The title of this piece is "I Just Feel Like No One's Ever Gonna Be Able to Break My Heart Like That Again," and it is from a novel I'm working on about queer friendship. So yeah, the sections I'm reading today are kind of like, I think, a little bit in the middle. So a section after these people have a friend breakup, and then a section prior from early in their friendship. Dov keeps catching himself in an imagined conversation with Oprah. It happens while he's washing dishes, while he's trudging between gender, women, and sexuality studies and intermediate accounting. As he's speeding from accounting to acting 2, hands shoved in his pockets to keep them from going numb. The conversation keeps him up at night as he flips his pillow back and forth, trying to stay on the cool side. In the conversation, Dov imagines himself in the same cerulean armchair where Will Smith crumpled, explaining how Jada had an entanglement affair with their protege. Opposite him, Oprah wears tan, wide-legged pants and a curve-hugging plum sweater. Dov remembers to cross his legs so that he appears more delicate. He scratches beneath his silk ascot, but refrains from unpeeling his light budgie. Millions are watching. So, Oprah says, tell me about your relationship with Agnes. Dov presses his middle fingers into his eyelids. Might be about to cry. He sighs instead. I really don't know what to say other than she helped me become myself. I wouldn't be this field of flowers or this bird corpse rotting on the ground without her. Oprah goes, She turns to the camera and folds her clasped hands over her knees in preparation for a sociology lecture. Dov and Agnes were what the LGBTQIA2S+ community calls queer platonic partners, Oprah says.
Today, we're here to talk about how it all went wrong. But this isn't just a story about the LGBTQIA2S+ community. Dov and Agnes's story touches on universal themes. What do we owe those we love in telling the stories of our lives? Are they ever ours to tell? And is it worth it to tell our stories even when we know they might hurt someone? Dov, Oprah says, reaching for his hand. Let's start with how Agnes appropriated your experiences for her performance piece, Trans, Tranny, and Me. Oprah gets the 10 minutes remaining hand signal from her producer. There's just one thing I'm still not understanding, Oprah says. You use he, him pronouns, yet you identify as, she checks her notes, non-binary? Oh yeah, Dov stutters. Pronouns actually are distinct from gender identity. I tried a bunch of other ones that would be like more easily identifiable as trans, I guess, but I just kept coming back to these. Fascinating stuff, Oprah says, though I'm still not sure I understand these pronouns. But I digress. Was there anyone in your life who helped you arrive at this particular arrangement? Agnes, actually. It was last winter. They were waiting to check out at the Willie Street Co-op, Agnes jouncing a plastic bag of malted milk balls she'd insisted on getting Dov as a treat after Z finished here accounting final. Agnes happened to know the cashier and started to introduce Dov. This is Dov. We met because here, she paused. Dov's mom lives at the same nursing home as mine. Afterwards, they shivered in the parking lot waiting for the bus. Agnes said, I noticed you get kind of tense when I start to introduce you with Z here now, and I was wondering if, it still feels okay to introduce you like that, or if something else would feel better. Dov dragged her beanie down over her eyes and was like, IDK. I don't want to inconvenience people by changing again, but nothing is really feeling like it fits. Agnes lifted Dov's beanie to uncover one eye and said, you look like a pirate. Then, it's really not that much work. People can adjust. Also, I was thinking about it, and who's to say you can't just go back to he, him? It could be a placeholder, but also just forever. Won't people think I'm backtracking? Like I'm not still trans, Dov asked. Yeah, maybe, Agnes said, boring people. The bus pulled up. As they climbed on board, Agnes said, we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. What's that? Dov asked. Oh, just T.S. Eliot, Agnes smirked. My English degree costs $200,000. She leaned back into the seat and tipped her head onto his shoulder. Fucking nerd, Dov said. Near the end of the imagined conversation, Oprah kneels before Dov, clasping each of his hands in one of her own. I apologize, Oprah exclaims, for my 2007 Born in the Wrong Body Jennifer Finney Boylan interview. Oh, I guess I don't. No, it is not okay, Oprah continues. But your graciousness is a testament to your community's resilience. I, for one, feel inspired by our conversation, and she sweeps her hand across the room. I'm sure our audience does too. Oprah sobs on the ground in front of him. Dov scratches his ass. So this next scene is from the beginning of the relationship. It's drizzling, so they leave the queer art market early and take the bus back to Dov's apartment. Agnes flops on her back at the other end of his magenta couch, scrolling on her phone. Their calves touch in a way that is maybe intentional, maybe not. Suddenly, as if the memory is radiating outwards from their connected calves, Dobbs remembers this thing that happened with Lorraine in that's his mom, in 2008. He was scuffing his wheelies against the aqua linoleum tiles of Willie Street, while Lorraine weighed organic tomatoes. At the end of the aisle, Dobbs spotted the latest issue of People magazine, with a picture of Ellen DeGeneres and her wife on the cover. Their noses looked long and pointy and wobbled in the middle, like his. It made him wonder. Mom, do you think I'm a lesbian? He asked. Lorraine said, that's so sweet that you support gay marriage, honey, but no. Of course you're not a lesbian. You can't be a lesbian because you're a boy. Looking at Agnes on the couch opposite him, Dov thinks, yep, definitely a lesbian. He smiles. Agnes looks up and sees him grinning and says, what? Nothing. The afternoon sun is making the living room maybe a little too hot, but Agnes looks so pretty, sitting there in the dust-struck light. And Dov has this feeling of something clicking into place. like when a song you loved years ago has been stuck in your head, and you only just now remembered the words.
Our next and final reader for the night is Rebecca Kilroy. Rebecca Kilroy is a prose writer from New Jersey. Her work has appeared in Pioneer Town, The Forge, Tramset, and is forthcoming in the latest issue of Cold Magazine.
I get to talk a lot tonight. As anyone who's been in the fiction workshop in the fall knows, I have a long-standing goal in grad school, and that is to write fiction about bog bodies. And I have about 4 bog body stories in process at the moment. This is the closest to complete, so I'm going to read the first bit of this. It's called Observable Phenomenon. Sean's niece was scarily smart. He'd been her guardian all of a month, and already the worrying kept him up most nights. My brother's girl, Tina, is the same, Martin said, real bright. She could name all the rivers of Ireland by the time she was 6. Sean nodded, but he thought Neela was different, of another breed altogether. She'd started talking early and never stopped. At 4, she was forever asking questions he couldn't answer. Her first morning with him, she pointed at an egg boiling in the pot and asked what happened to the souls of chickens who'd never been born. He'd ended up cooking the eggs until the yolks were chalk. There's something watchful about her, he tried to explain to Martin as they finished their lunch. They were leaning against the body of the milling machine, its metal ticking hot under the sun. Nothing gets past those eyes, and the memory on her, Jesus, never lets me forget a word I've said. Martin laughed and balled his sandwich wrapper in his fist. She'll be powerful trouble to some fellow someday. She'll be trouble to us all. Don't be so hard on yourself. It's a good thing you're doing, taking her in. Sean lifted his head to look out at the wide, dark stretch of bog around them. He hoped so. He hadn't gotten much choice. Neela's father had never been part of things, and then Sean's sister was killed in a car wreck. He was sure Maggie had only put him down as the guardian because he'd been godfather at Neela's baptism. Likely she'd meant to find someone more suitable. More likely she never thought she'd need to. Any word from that girlfriend of yours lately? Martin asked. Sean shook his head. She's not my girlfriend anymore, not according to her. Bad luck. Martin slapped him on the back. She'll come round. Sean nodded and took another swig of water. Sweat crusted the collar of his shirt. The black bogland was a sponge for heat. Sean didn't like the bogs himself, had never wandered in them as a child. His parents had burned coal. The whole country could get up in arms about cultural heritage, but the smell of peat, as far as he knew, was only for the tourists. Martin climbed into the cab of the milling machine and started it. It belched out gray, diesel smoke. In Sean's grandfather's time, they cut turf with sharp-edged shovels. Now, the blades on the bottom of the machine ground up the top layer of peat, carried it along a conveyor belt, pressed it, and shit it out in long, black rectangles. Sean's job was to walk behind it and score the shit lines every half meter so that the peat could be cut and stacked at the end of the row. They had 20-odd rows left to go that day. Sean wasn't done worrying about Neela, though. He was meant to be having a meeting with her teacher that week to talk about how she was adjusting to circumstances. It sounded as though he were circumstances and the adjusting wasn't going well. He worried they'd try to put her in special classes. She wasn't slow, but she could blurt out odd things at odd moments. The other day, he'd been driving the car past Keeper Hill. She'd pointed down a gravel road and said she used to live in a house down there. Maggie and Neela had only ever lived in flats. And she'd had screaming nightmares lately, where she woke saying that someone had her tied up. If she started saying things like that at school, they'd have the social workers after him. He scored the lines and watched the machine churn up the clods of brown earth and push it along the belt. It looked like nothing from here, nothing you could stack or burn or make any use of. One of the clods moving up the belt was an almost perfect circle, too well formed to be real. Hey, Sean yelled, waving an arm at Martin, the sound of the machine cut off. You alright? There's something here. Sean said, shit. Martin slammed the door of the cab. Last thing we need today. Sean lifted the thing off the belt. His first thought was that it would be a stone or a chunk of bogwood. There was something about peat, the acid maybe, that kept wood from decaying, and chunks of it turned up petrified for sale in the tourist shops. But this lump was too light to be solid all the way through. It was covered in mud. Beneath that, his fingers felt something like leather. Football, he said, passing it off to Martin. Must have got knocked in. I don't know, Martin hefted it. Feels heavy for that. Hold it, will you? Sean took the ball back while Martin jogged to the cab of the machine and got a bottle of water out from under the seat. If it's worth anything, he said, jogging back to Sean, we'll split the profits 50-50, yeah? What could it be that's worth anything? I don't know, fossilized dinosaur shit? Oh yeah, of course, the great Irish dinosaurs. Sean unscrewed the cap and dumped the bottle over the ball. Rivers of dark earth dribbled onto Sean's shoes. As the mud began to loosen, he used his thumb to brush it away. He grazed something hard, smooth and pale, almost white, a line of little somethings like stones or teeth. Fuck. Sean nearly tossed the thing back in the bog. Jesus, take it. No. Fucking, it's a, do you see the, Jesus. They left the milling machine where it was, a row half done, and they'd discover later the keys still in it, and went for the guards. When Sean got home, Neela and Emmy were at the kitchen table, coloring. Sean hadn't spoken to his ex much in the 3 months since they'd broken up, but he called her from the Garda station and asked if she'd pick Neela up from nursery. He told her it was an emergency. He stood in the doorway for a second, breathing in the sight of them. Emmy's hair spilled across the table as she reached for a crayon. Neela whispered something that sent them both into a fit of giggles. How's it? Sean asked. Emmy looked up. You're back then? Neela lifted her drawing off the table and held it out to them. We're making art, Uncle Sean, look. Are you now? Let's see. He took the drawing and squinted at it. It looked like a man with a square face and a gaping mouth. A triangle of a hat sat on his head. Is this me? He asked, holding the page next to his face and dropping his mouth in imitation. Neela giggled. No, it's my house. Oh, of course. That's my bedroom window, and that's the chimney. She pointed at what he thought was a wispy tuft of hair on the side of the man's head. And here's the front door. There's another door in the back, but you can't see it, and we always keep it locked anyway because one time a dog got out. Niels has been telling me all about the lady who lives there, Emmy added. A friend of yours? Some imagination, Sean muttered, running his hands under the tap. Bits of turf melted into mud and swirled down the drain. He reached into the top cupboard for a clean dish towel. His hands brushed the knife rack, which he'd put up there when Neela moved in. She got nervous around the sight of knives. Besides, it was the only bit of common-sense childproofing he could think of. I should be getting home, Emmy said. Sean turned away from the sink. You'll not stay for dinner? Another time. He wished he hadn't looked so hopeful. It sat on his face now like a crestfallen puppy's. He dried his hands and followed her out to the landing. I'm not seeing anyone else, you know. It would be fine if you were, she said. Right. He couldn't bring himself to ask if she was seeing anyone herself. She slid her bag over her shoulder and held the door for her. Thanks for tonight, he said. Of course. Is everything all right? Yeah, or maybe. Martin and I were cutting turf and we found a body. Oh, God. Well, part of one. The rest is in there, somewhere, I guess. The guards are looking for it. She bit the edge of her lip. You okay? Will be. Right. She reached out and gave the upper part of his arm a short, firm squeeze. Take care. He shut the door after her and leaned against it for a moment. The creak of the hall floor made him turn round. Neela stood in the doorway, her hands worrying a box of crayons. Sean felt the color drop out of his face. Are you okay? He asked. She nodded. Did you hear what I was talking about just then? That you found a dead lady in the bog? Oh, well, I didn't really mean. When I died, they put me in a bog. What? The words had slipped out of her as easily as if she was telling him what she'd eaten for lunch. She blinked at him, her dark curls spewing around her face. My body from before. He put me in the bog. She frowned. It hurt. Who did that? The man I lived with? Right. Sean's legs had gone cold. Somewhere in the dim of his mind were questions he should ask but couldn't quite reach. Are you hungry? She nodded and let him lead her back into the kitchen. He laid thick pink slices of ham in the pan. The cold flesh of them, just out of the fridge, made him want to pull his hand back. Neela resumed her drawing. The smell of frying meat curled through the room. He drew in a slow breath. Look, this man you lived with, Neela. Is this with your man? As far as he knew, Maggie hadn't dated anyone after Neela's father left. Certainly, he would have known she was bringing someone home. He felt an eerie need to be sure. Neela shook her head. No, before, when I lived in the house. You've never lived in a house, sweetheart. She looked up from her page, her little face pink and cross. You weren't there. The ham spit and hissed in the pan. Sean turned away to flip it. One side was already near black and smoking. He slid it onto a plate. Neela frowned. Could I have a cheese toastie instead? Sure. That night, after he tucked her in, he couldn't seem to make himself get up and leave. He sat on the edge of the bed for a while, like he was watching for something to happen. Neela slept peacefully. The shell of her hand curled under her chin. The pink glow of the nightlight gave her hair a red tinge, like her mother's. They'd made him go identify Maggie's body when it happened, in a cold storage drawer in the basement of the hospital. He'd wished there had been anyone else around to do it. Blood and glass were still matted in her hair. She'd looked so much older than she was, than she'd ever get to be. It had been a cold day with wet roads. She'd been on her way to pick Neela up from nursery. The detective in charge had asked him a shitload of questions about her state of mind, her moods, her financial situation. In the end, they concluded that the tires had slipped, nothing anyone could have done about it. He pulled the covers over Neela's shoulder. She murmured something in her sleep that sounded like car or far, may have been the start of man.
No, I'm just saying.
Let's see about a Q&A. So I'm going to invite the other two readers to come back on up here because I'm tired of standing up here by myself. Or you can bring your chair, you can just bring yourselves, casual standing, whatever feels good. And I think we have, I'm actually get my phone so I know what time. 20 minutes. Beautiful. Okay, so we have a little bit of time. If anyone has any questions, you're welcome to ask any or all of us things about the work we read, other work we're doing.
We have 20 minutes.
We don't need to use the whole time. I'm not going to keep you here. It's not like my undergrad class where I make them stay the whole time. But if anyone would like to, we're trying it out. We're seeing how it works.
Howard.
So it seems like you all mentioned having focuses in the type of genres you normally are writing. Like, how often are you diverging into your normal creative nonfiction and fiction? Or how do you navigate that?
I'd like to jump in and start. You have the mic.
I don't think my answer to that is very interesting. I just do it pretty often now. It's fun. I'm really into lineation in poems. That's kind of a new discovery from like teaching it to my students and watching them be excited about it. And my nonfiction is no longer serious, really, but it used to be more serious. So then I would write unserious fiction, like unserious serious fiction, like as a compliment to that. Okay, fantasy.
Sorry, I'm not sure I got the question, like how we alternate between
Yeah.
genres. Okay, I feel like my answer is also like close to yours. I haven't written, like I was writing a lot of nonfiction before I came to the program. I feel like my attention has been totally snatched by fiction. Also because I'm like working on different genres of fiction, like speculative fiction, realism. So all of that like take up my time, like trying to like think of what story would fit in this kind of genre, or like how do I tell this realist story using like the speculative like genre to tell that. So that sort of like took me away from nonfiction, and I think I tried a bit of poetry, but I'm never going to share that. I tried some poetry in a poetry workshop class, and that's that. Yeah.
I have been in two kind of hybrid genre classes this year. So both Doug and Sugi really encouraged me to try writing other genres. I still feel very at home in fiction, but I've been playing with nonfiction recently, and I'm trying to expand to different genres within fiction. Francis said, playing with the speculative and realist modes and moving through different places and histories. Everyone here knows me for a lot of this, a lot of Irish history, but I do write other things occasionally.
Did you have just like a fabulous day on Monday?
I spent most of Monday in Newark Airport, so I did not, but it should have been. Hey, I also saw that image here.
I was gonna say, you said this is one of 4 Bogman stories. Are there any details about the other 3 that you'd be willing to offer this audience?
I have been working to create a world in which they are interconnected and can become one massive dog body story, otherwise known as a novel. But I'm not sure how that's going to go. This one is based on a real case that happened in England in 1982, where they found a head in a bog, assumed it was a recent murder victim, got a confession from her husband, and then found out that it was ancient. But you cannot unconfess to murder, as he learned. So, yeah. I don't know if the other stories are compatible with that yet. There's also a completely different version of this story where he's not raising his niece and struggling with his sexuality. It varies.
I'm sorry, we are all throwing questions at you because it was standing, but are you thinking of like an interconnected relationship? Because it's interesting, like I do like people appearing in
I noticed that in your story that you read, it felt very grounded in Minneapolis. Like there are a lot of references to, places in Minneapolis, like the specific highway and the hospital, things like that. When you moved here, did you make like the conscious choice to start writing pieces set here, or did it kind of happen organically? And also just like more generally, how do you think about the place where you currently live? How do you think it influences what you're writing?
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like I still write a lot of Nigerian stories, like stories that are written in Nigeria. This is like my first out of Nigeria story because I'm writing about somebody who got here and sort of lost their memory of home, and that's why in the story he's referred to as the man because he doesn't even like remember the name that was given to him by his parents back home. He has like no memory of Nigeria at all. So the moment he has the accident, his spirit sort of like connects to his origin. So that's the home he returns to, which is, oh, I'm Nigerian. Like, where have I been? What have I been doing? So, to tell that story, I needed to like start from here. So that was like my first time of like writing a new place into my stories. But it's definitely felt different because I had to like one of the I feel like I wouldn't call it. I would call it like a kind of challenge that I have sometimes, which I also like find other writers from other cultures have. It's like how to name, like how to think, what to call things, what to call this kind of tree, what to call this kind of forest. Because of course the trees that are growing in Egypt, the vegetation is different back home. So I struggled a lot with like what to call certain things, how to describe certain things. I kept asking, what do you call this highway? But I mean, if I were writing a story that was set back home, I would just like tell the story without asking questions. So it's it definitely feels different, and now I am beginning to understand why people say that when they're home, like when they're away from home for a long time, the mental room or whatever where stories come from start shifting because they are now like what they see is mostly the kind of stories they tell. So you see yourself talking about number 3 bus instead of talking about the Molue back home. You know what I mean? Like it's like you see your like how you tell stories like slowly changing without you even being in control. So I feel like for me to even tell this story, it means that a large level of Americanness has gotten into me to be able to like write it, you know. So I feel like it's something that happens over time, and you're not even like aware of that change or that transformation.
Well, unless there are any other questions, I think we can wrap things up. First off, let's give it up again for the readers tonight. Shout out Rachel for some impromptu co-hosting. Like I mentioned in my intro, our next Majors in Quinn, which is also our last of the semester, is going to be on April 27th, same time, same place. Thank you all for coming out and showing your support for the program and our community. It really means a lot to see you all here. So buy some books and see you next month.
When I'm like, yeah.
The last one's hard.
I'm ready for it. She's so ready.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, one of my friends was right on it.
Oh, it's the February. Did you read the February? I read Will and I read some. She said it was like translated from this one. If you flip through it, it's a little bit like oh yeah. And I did read it. Yeah. And it was, so some of them are quite short, so we should read someday. Every day's a little one. I was like, yeah. But I haven't read it all the way through. I would like to read it.
Glad you're enjoying it. I enjoy it. Just reading something different.
Yeah. Oh yeah, where are you putting these 3 new books?
Oh, one behind.